Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Denver, Colorado. And today what I have for you is my May 2019 paper pumpkin, Alternatives. So let's just get started. Okay, here is my paper pumpkin. It came in this lovely box this time. This is the Hugs from Shelly kit. It's called Hug from Shelly May 2019, and the projects that the kit makes, according to the way they suggest, are these 4 sets of cards. And I think I've got that tilted so there's no glare. But there's this beautiful bird's nest and hugs for you, a hello card with this beautiful designer series paper front that looks like the box. There's a feather and some birds and some leaf pattern here. It's just a lovely kit. And if you watched me at all, I never do the projects that are suggested. I go straight to my alternatives and I always make full-size cards. Today I'm going to start with, you get lots and lots of material in your kit, including the card bases and envelopes, and the envelopes for this are very interesting. Envelopes have this beautiful patterned paper on the inside, and it's the same thing with the blue envelopes. They have also the patterned paper on the inside, and you know me, I will use this paper and tear these envelopes apart and use the paper to make more cards so that you get more alternatives than they suggest that you can get. So let's just get started, and let me bring out my first project. This is this base here, and I've cut this piece in half and then cut it down so that it would span this little piece here. This piece measures 3 inches by 1 3/4 inches, and so 1 3/4 is half of this, and then I cut it off at the 3-inch mark. And you could do more with the pieces that are left, but this is the design that I came up with. I used one of the feathers, some of the flowers, and to give you an idea, on the back of these envelopes are these other images here. So whenever possible, I used only part of the envelope so I could get another one of these flowers, because the kit comes with a limited number of the blue flowers and a limited number of the pinks. And so I have taken some of those images off I think I mostly used that one. In fact, I might have only used this one to get some more blue flowers. So the pieces that you need to make this card, I used a very vanilla base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Then I have 2 pieces. This is using the beautiful Pretty Peacock new color. So most of you don't have this color in your stash yet because it won't be available to order until June the 4th. So I thought about this a bit, and I think you could probably do this by using a darker color behind this, say early espresso, or to use the pool party, which is the other color that's used in here, and just fill in with the pool party to make some of these alternatives, since you don't have this paper in your kit. Then I have a piece of brown that is 3.5 by 5, and then I took the back side of, when I made the card that uses this front, I cut this piece off, and I'm using it for the front of this card. So the bases, the other side of the bases, can be used for some of your vanilla pieces if you need it. Then this piece of very vanilla is 3 by 4.5. There's my piece here, my 2 flowers, and my feather. So the very first thing we can do is put down these pieces on the front and on the inside. I always get my kits so late that if I've got anything else going on, it's kind of the end of the month before I can get my alternatives posted, unless I do it literally the day that it comes in, and that kind of depends on what else is in my schedule. So this time I couldn't get to it right away, so a little late, but and I haven't looked at any of the other alternatives that are out there. Rachel Tessman always does such a nice job, and there are several others that do as well. Okay, there's one little bit of stamping that I need to do on a couple of these pieces, particularly on the brown and on this piece. And I didn't show you the stamp set, so let me do that. Let me put a piece of white behind it so you can see. The stamp set is beautiful. It's got these two birds. It's got a cluster of flowers that looks like the flowers on the box. And it's got this feather, an ampersand. Then it's got dear friend, thank you, and for you, love, hello, and grateful in a beautiful font. And a lot of them are thank you and hugs, or hugs and love, that kind of thing. So there's lots of combinations that you can use using this stamp set. It's a beautiful stamp set. And one of the pieces here are these little splotches that appear on my card here, and actually appear on the designer series paper. And so I'm going to take my pretty peacock here, and again, if you're using Pool Party, I think that would work to do a two-tone on here. And I am just going to put some of these splotches here to cover places that were missing on this piece of paper, just because I want it pretty well covered. So I'm going to go off the edge here on my little piece of scratch paper here and get lots of those splotches on there. All right, and then on these pieces here, the smaller piece here has these little splotches kind of to match, but I did stamp off. So they're not quite so pronounced, and I stamped off twice, and then moving my stamp around here, I got my splotches put kind of all around the card here. There, I think that's good. And on this piece on the inside, I'm going to do the same thing, stamping off a couple times and basically just getting the perimeter. And it's one of the ways to tie the front and the inside of the card together. And so I'm just going to do my splotching, some obviously darker than others, so I'll have to match that around. There we go. And then this piece on the inside goes centered on the piece of Pretty Peacock or the Pool Party, whichever you're using. If you're a demonstrator, you may already have some of this paper. And we're going to set that there, and then I'm using my 3 by 4.5 piece here of Very Vanilla to go centered on my crumb cake piece here. And there we go. That's the inside of the card complete. Now on the outside, since this is now stamped, this is ready. Let me get my ink out before I put my arm in it. To go on the front of the card. And this I just centered on here. And then there's one more little bit of stamping that we need to do, and that is to put this beautiful thank you on my card front here. And I just kind of tuck it down here in the corner, and again with this ink, or this could be done in early espresso if you don't have this ink. And this font is just beautiful. Now this is photopolymer, but I have lots and lots of layers on this, so I think I will be fine. I think that's right. And I'm going to put my thank you just right down here in this corner. There we go. Then these pieces are going to go up on dimensionals. Okay, so this piece needs to just be centered near the top, and then I put some dimensionals on my flowers here so that I could have one at the top and one at the bottom. And then I have my feather, and I'm going to add some glue at the top of my feather, which is really nice with a pattern on the vellum. You just don't see the glue. Oh gosh, look at that. Ink all over myself. And then put a small piece of dimensional on the bottom of my feather, also which will not show because of the pattern on the vellum. So I'm going to stick that right on the blue part of my feather here and put that into place. Now then, I do have a couple of sequins on here, and in one of the sequin mixes that they gave us this year, I have used some white sequins, and I don't have much call for brown sequins, but the sequins on this seem to cry out to me to be more in the crumb cake color. So what I am using is my bronze blend, and it just does the trick. And I only need 3 sequins on here, so I'm using my bronze blend to color a couple of sequins here. And I'll put the name of the sequins. One of them was the Gingham colored sequins that we got during the year, and then something else, and I just have a few of these left over. And my guess is you probably have a few sequins in your stash. And if you have a crumb cake marker or you have a bronze marker, you can do that. You can always put rhinestones on instead, or pearls. But in this case, I went ahead and used the sequins, that were the white ones we got during the year. And I'll put the names of all of those collections down below the video for you. That is card number 1, and I just love the way that came out. I think it's a very pretty thank you card. All right. The next card we're going to do is this one, the card base that was provided. So I cut this piece off, and I cut this piece in half at 1 3/4 inches, and that is the piece that I have on here. I used a Petal pink card base that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. And then I took apart one of those envelopes, and I took 2 strips of paper from the center. This is the flap that closes on the envelope. And so we've got this little score mark here. And what I did was I put my paper right down here along the bottom, and in fact I'm going to go ahead and do that just straight away, and leaving a similar kind of margin all the way around. And then I took one of these flowers that came in the kit, and I put some snail on the back of it, and I laid it right across that seam. so that nobody could see the seam and all we see is the paper. Then in the kit we got these beautiful little bird embellishments, and so I used one on here and I put that down with a glue dot. And so there's my glue dot, and I'm going to put my little bird in place here. And then on this one, the sequins, and I'm pretty sure this was from, I don't know, but I have a whole package full of sequins in all different kinds of colors that we had available to us in the catalog this last year, and those would all be still available probably just through the 3rd of June when those catalogs go away. So I'll make sure I put those down below. And you can see on the inside of this card that already gives us some pretty good decoration. I stamped Dear Friend, and then I used my crumb cake ink and put that little cluster of flowers down here. And then I'm using some blends to put some light old olive on the leaves here. I guess there's just those 2 leaves. I did mean to use my markers instead of my blend because that'll bleed through the back. So if you use your markers for this, then you won't get any bleed. So you use your Petal pink marker and pear pizzazz or something light green leaves, and then it won't bleed through the back like mine just did. I had forgotten I used these instead of the blends. And there we have that pretty flower there. Then on the front of this card, it's a pretty simple process. I centered this piece of soft suede is 5 inches by 2 5/8, and I set that down on the front of my card here, centered on this piece that's here. And then I put these 2 pieces together, and centered this one on here, and then I put a few dimensionals on this card. And then I'm going to take this piece and center it here on the front of my card. There we go. And then I'm going to take these sequins and put them into place in different places where there's bare spots on this little panel. And I think that's all I need because I've already stamped to save a little time, and I did this in early espresso, and I wanted this little piece to kind of come all the way over to the edge and hang over the edge of this a little bit to give a fullness to the card. So I need snail on the top of my piece, and then I need some dimensionals here along the bottom here, but not all the way to the bottom because it's going to overhang a little. And there we go. And then I'm going to add one more sequin just to the bottom of here. And then I have this pretty little bow. Part of the twine that you get with this kit is this pretty petal pink twine, and then like some linen thread, and I've used both of them on a couple of different ways here, and I've pre-tied my bow here to save a little bit of time. So I'm just going to gather a glue dot here, pinch it up so that it's more like a sausage, and I'm going to place that right here on the top of my message, and then let those little tails hang down. But that is the second card that I've done. So that's card number 2. Card number 3, and this is what I've done with that beautiful bird's nest. What I did on this, you'll need I used a very vanilla card base here, and it's 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4, and then I took a 1/2 inch off of this. And the reason I keep taking the pieces off of these is because these panels are a little bit narrower coming off of a note card, and in order to center properly on the front, unless you get them with very large borders, but they're pretty long, so I wanted them to sit more centered, so I cut, on several of these, I cut these pieces off. And all I did on this was I fussy cut, not very thoroughly, but just basically around this edge, just to add some interest. So I have my card base that I cut a 1/2 inch off of. Then I have this piece of Pool Party, and this is 5 1/4 by 3 1/2. And this piece will go right on the front of this panel, centered on the front of this panel here, with a little bit of a border all the way around, like that. Then this piece, I just used some snail with this, and I think it's better to use a dot runner on these little edges here, just because it makes so much less of a mess. Okay, so there we go. So there's my little bird's nest. Isn't it gorgeous? Oh my gosh, so pretty. And I'm going to fix it so that it fits on here with a tiny bit of a border on this side and a top and bottom border there. And there we go. We have our bird's nest on there. And on this, it was safe to use my blends because I've got another layer behind, so if it bleeds, it goes there. And just to add a little bit of interest, nothing special in the coloring here, I colored my eggs in the Pool Party. I colored my leaves, or at least some of them, in the light Old Olive. And what I did was I kind of randomly colored just some of the leaves, not all of them, because I thought getting just a little bit of interest away from the monotone kind of look here would make it more interesting. So again, just randomly covered some but not all of the leaves here, and even a couple of these blades of grass randomly here as they might stick out from the nest. And there we go. And that is what I did. Then on this one, I'm pretty sure this one came from the Gingham Gala set of sequins that are adhesive-backed. I used a couple of these around on the card, and these sequins are kind of big. So what I did was I put the sequins down, and then I still thought it needed just a tiny bit more. I used a rhinestone in the middle of the sequin, and this is so matte, not shiny in any way, that I thought the extra bit of sparkle here added a little something to the front of this card. So there you have what I did to doll this card up. Now, on the inside, out of the inside of this envelope flap here, I cut a few of these little leaves so that I could put a little bit of snail on the back of them here. Let me get both of them while I'm at it. And put them in place just so that they kind of peeked out on the edge of my page here and provided some decoration for the inside and a little interest from the outside. And so that is what I did there. Then I was able to take off of a piece of envelope this little thing that had the blue on it. And this one I thought, I'm just going to do a early espresso one here. So now I have such a problem with straight sometimes. So I've got my little For You, and I have a little bit of twine. And so what I did was I put my twine around my fingers a couple times here, twisted it, and then pulled bits and pieces of it. And then what I did was I took a great big old chunk of dimensional here and put it across the whole piece of twine. Now I'm probably going to have to trim a little bit of that off. In fact, I know I'm going to have to here to get it narrow enough to fit behind my sentiment. But the little bits of twine with their edges kind of going off here kind of mimic the material in the nest, and I thought that was good. And put my sentiment across the top there. And there you have it. That is card number 3. I just love that little nest. It is so pretty. All right, the next 2 cards I'm going to show you together because I did them in such a way that I needed to do both of them almost at the same time. So what I did was, and I'll show you that card base, has the pretty blue flying birds on it here. And what I did was I took my 2 1/4 inch punch, came right up in here so that I had those birds centered like that, and I punched out this piece. Then I used the rest of that piece to make this card. And then I could use the birds over here with the inside of one of those envelopes, or 2 of the envelopes, to make this card. So we'll put this one together first. And I think on this one, you don't have the pretty peacock. So I think I would use either crumb cake or early espresso to do this one if you don't have access to the pretty peacock yet. All right, so what we need for this one has a few pieces, is the base, which is 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Then I have a piece of the pretty peacock that is 4 by 5 1/4. I cut this piece a little bit bigger on this one. I just think it will add a little something to this. Then I have a piece of pretty peacock, and this has the smaller, so I cut a 2-inch punch out of the middle of that so that I could frame my piece that's already got this piece. I went ahead and put my feather on that so that it, because you can't get the punch in well, you have to be careful what size you put on there. And so I wanted that little rim on there. And then these pieces are 3 by 3. There's 2 of them, one in the pretty peacock and one in the very vanilla. And this is all illusion because this bird looks like it's on your base. It's not. This rim looks like it's on this. It's not. So what I did was I cut 2 3 by 3 pieces and put this right where I wanted it. Then I'm just going to glue these 2 pieces together. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to put it on this piece. So I'm going to put my glue on the back of this piece here. And then I am going to make sure I've got that orientation right, because of where you cut out the bird, you really have to have this a certain way in order for this to work, because of where the birds are. So then I can take this piece and set it over top of this piece, and that is how I got the bird on the front of this. Now then, I have a piece of this pretty peacock ribbon that came with this kit. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in place here, covering up the base of my feather. And I'm going to put a little bit of extra snail on the back of this ribbon here. And bring this around, and I cut a little bit more than I needed there. And there we go. We have basically the front of this piece. Now, I doubled up on the twine here and put a little 2 strands of the linen thread together for my little bow. And then I'm picking up, scrunching a glue dot and put that into place over here. Isn't that just the prettiest thing? Let me go ahead and put this into place. Oh, I want to show you this. You get so many of these labels out of here, and I quickly used all of my labels. So what I did was I cut out the rim of one more of these labels. You can get 2 more by doing this. I just fussy cut out the rim. I did my hello on a piece of scrap and then just glued that rim on the top. It's a little bit bigger than the original label, but it works. So my hello is going to go right down here. I've got my hello there. And then I put this piece up on dimensionals as well. Okay, so here's my card base. And so I think I can adhere this piece down, which I'm going to do here. And then center this piece on here. And then I have some of those white sequins again. And again, you can use rhinestones or whatever all else you have in your stash. And I just put a few of these white sequins around on my card. I just must have ordered a lot of them because I just have white sequin. I just have a whole bag full of sequins from this year. So I'm trying to use up a bit of my stash here. And let's see, we'll put one more maybe up here in this corner. And then on the inside, I simply stamped the bird again. And so that is card number 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's finish the other half of using the circle. So let's do this one next. I used a pool party card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Now, the pieces that I need for this is I need one of these little flowers, and then I used some leaves, these little metal leaf, what are they called? They're called leaves trinkets, and these are carrying over to the new catalog. And so I felt like when I put this little flower on here wasn't quite enough. So I put the leaves around it to kind of beef it up. And then once I had the silver, I then used the silver pearls to match that because there's silver going around the rim here. And then there is our, there's our circle piece. So this is the piece that I took out of the other one for the birds. Then I have my label here with hugs on it, stamped in Pool Party. And on this, what I did was I took one of those envelopes that has this pattern in it, and I cut across the widest possible part of that envelope and cut out a 1/2-inch strip. And then I'm going to trim this down so that the angles here are going opposite directions. And now I've got my piece for across here. Then I took another of the envelopes. Okay, I had to go back off camera because I cut my paper wrong, or punched my hole on the wrong side in order for this to work. And it's just too close to the bottom to work. I cut another piece, and what I've done is place this on here where I'd like to have it go. Drew my little circle around the back on this piece of envelope paper, and then I'm going to use my 2 1/4 inch punch and cut a little bit larger circle than I drew in order for this all to work. And what I have to do in order to do that is give up this little flower. There we go. I'm just going to cut out that piece and get out my pieces here without tearing anything. Now this piece will fit on here around there, and I can go ahead and put that piece down. So you have to be really careful what sides you're punching your circles in order to make this work and not get yourself into trouble. But there are 3 of these envelopes in there, and it just depends on which of these alternatives appeal to you and which ones you want to make. So I'm going to set this down here so that it frames that circle and works like that. Okay, this piece is just now going to go along here as a decorative element rather than trying to span those other 2 pieces. But right along here, I think will work. Then this piece needs to go up on a dimensional. And then you see it looks so tiny up there. I decided to put a glue dot on each of these pieces here, on these little leaves trinkets, and stick one underneath on one side here and put the other one on the other side, and it just beefed it up enough that it looks the right scale now. So then I used my silver pearls here and put one on the center of each of those flowers. Now this piece, my birds, need to go tucked in here. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of snail around the back of this circle that I cut here, and pick up my birds so that they're centered the way I want them on there. And then I am going to take a little bit of Scotch tape, and I'm going to secure that circle in place because there's a very little rim holding that on, and I sure don't want that to travel. So I've just put a little Scotch tape on the top and the bottom, and I'm absolutely certain that's not going anywhere now. All right, so now I have my sentiment here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a couple of dimensionals on that and put that into place on this side. Then I put a couple of these pearls on the inside of my little bird circle. You know, I'm going to add a couple more. Just because I like the bling. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of this panel. No. Yes, I did lay that down flat. Okay, I've got to think about that for a second. And put that into place right here on my card front. And then on the inside of this one, what I did was I cut this circle here that was cut from the envelope, and I'm just going to move it off. I moved it off on two edges on that one, and I don't think I'm going to do that on here. I'm going to put this little bit of leaves right here and just trim off one little edge of that. And that ties the inside and the outside, and then I can just put this one in place. There we go. There's that card completed now. Now it looks funny without an extra pearl on this one, so I'm going to add one there. All right, that is card number 5. I have one more card that I did, and it is this one. And this one I used, I did a top folding card in the Petal Pink, 11 by 4 1/4, folded and scored at 5 1/2. And so there's my base. Then I used 2 pieces of very vanilla here, 4 by 5 1/4, and these can just be adhered right onto the front of this card here. Well, almost it can be. Not a snail. Okay, so like this, and then I have a long piece of, oh, I guess I'm going to have to do this on my, you know, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I did everything in order perfectly. So I'm going to put this on my silicone mat because it won't stick permanently. And I need, this is the inside of one of the pink envelopes, and this piece I'm going to put down here. I'm going to take this piece and put it down on my card front here by layering piece. And then I have this piece which spans just a little bit beyond that. And what I did was I took one of these other halves here and cut it in half, so I have enough to do 2 of these. These together was half of the card front. Okay, so now I need to add some snail to this piece and put this in place so that it spans the top and the bottom. Maybe a little straighter would be. There we go. All right, there we go. Now then I have a little piece of that pretty pink twine here. And so now I'm going to pick this up from here and put that into place along this edge, and I just want to secure this to the snail and run this piece along here and secure it to the snail on the back side. And let me get a little bit more snail down on this edge here. So there, I've secured it on the back of my piece, and this one looks like it needs to move over just a hair. There we go. And now I'm going to put this on my card front. Okay, so there we go. There is part of my card front done. And then I used one more of my little birds here, and I put that on a piece of, on a glue dot here. Put my bird kind of flying this way. And then what I did for the sentiment on this one, I used my sentiment here, and what I did was I just stamped that on a piece of scrap, very vanilla, and then I fussy cut out the word. I thought that looked so pretty, and it's got such a beautiful font. So I'm going to add a few dimensionals on the back of my sentiment here and put that into place just underneath my bird there. Put my grateful sentiment down there. Going to tie a little tiny bow on the for the front of the card here. And I'm going to get a glue dot here on my bow and put that into place up here on my card. Here we go. And then on this one, on the inside, I have my piece of very vanilla, and I used a little strip that I cut off the edge of this, either that or the top of the envelope, and put this into place. So I'm going to just go ahead and add this to the bottom here, leaving a little bit of a margin on the bottom, coming across here, and then trimming off the edges here. There we go. And then I have one of these cute little flowers from the laser cuts, and I used one of them right down here for a very simple little decoration on the inside, and it's just enough to bring the outside to the inside. And then let me put some snail on this and put this piece in place here. And then I used some of my artisan pearls, and they have this pretty pearls here, and it seems to be the exact color of the petal pink, and so I put a few of those around on the card here, and there we have our card number 6. Okay, so that is the project for today. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, let's see, I'm just going to hold one of these out, I think, of each of these, because it kind of fills up the whole screen here. So let's see, one each of these various ones, and there we go. So we have 6 cards here, and there we go. And I loved this kit. I loved it the way they put it out, actually. And you can make plenty of cards. You're limited only by being careful how you cut the envelope paper, and cutting some of these papers to use things a little differently. One could do this one like this one easily by just cutting that in half and not going through all the fuss of this. But I kind of like the idea of doing it just a little bit differently. This is the last day of May. My May prize is a 9-block set of the Stampin' Up! Clear blocks to mount your stamps. And so that is the prize, and it only takes putting an order on my website, www.lelbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. And the big thing coming is the new catalog, which will be available on June the 4th. Now, from midnight to noon on June the 4th, you won't be able to order anything on the site because they'll be in the process of converting the system to the new catalog. And then no later than noon is the way my website reads, that we'll be able to order on the in the new catalog. And so we've got just a little bit of time left on the old catalog and the occasions catalog, which will be available right up until June 3rd, and then new catalog from the 4th going forward. So again, I'd love to be your demonstrator if you don't have one, or you could join my team. In any case, I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, more tips. Bye!